All right, this is the third video in the series of creating this sample portfolio. What we're going to do now is two things. First, we're going to create a swatch that's going to define the color palette of our document. And then we're going to start to build out the typographic hierarchy using paragraph styles. So firstly, I will open this swatch panel. And this is the last time I'll explain that if you don't have this in your current workspace, you've got two options, right? You can either kind of piecemeal as you need things, go to Window, Color, Swatches, or whatever other panel you needed and open that. Or you can just download and install the workspace that I provided in this asset files. And then you'll have all this stuff by default and you won't have to go hunting for things. So I won't continue to explain that part, that if you don't have what we need, then you can go find it. I'm going to assume that you can do that on your own. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is I'm going to delete a lot of this stuff because, to be honest, I just don't like having a ton of swatches in my document that I'm not using. So I'm just going to delete all of these except for one. I will leave one because we're going to use that. I double clicked it to open this options panel. We're going to use that and edit it to create our first swatch. So I'm going to uncheck this box that says name with color value. And I'm going to type in primary because this is going to be the primary color that's applied throughout our document for anything that's not black or white, basically. And you can see that we could specify any type of color mode we wanted, right? If we were designing for screen, we would want to specify an RGB color because that is the color space that screens use. We are designing for print, which means this thing is going to have to be printed out using cyan, magenta, yellow, and black inks. So we want to select that CMYK color mode, which is already selected by default because that's the color space that our document is in. So just wanted to note that, but we'll stick with the CMYK color space. I'm just going to add some magenta here. I'm going to add 50% magenta to turn this orange and hit OK. And now we've got our first swatch made. And again, the nice thing, we covered this in class, but if I drag out a rectangle here and then unselect it, you can see that I'm just, by modifying the swatch, I can modify anything that swatch is applied to automatically, right? So if I decided, actually, I want this to be a little bit darker, not quite as yellow, I could change that magenta value to 60. And again, anywhere that this is applied is just going to automatically update without me having to actually go and change it. So I will delete that because we don't need it. And that's the swatch that we've created. So I'm going to minimize that dialog box, and now we will move on to starting to design our typographic hierarchy. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag out a text box so that we can kind of see what we're doing. I'm going to fill it with placeholder text by going to Type, Fill with Placeholder Text, just to give us something to look at. I will delete most of it. Actually, maybe I will copy and then paste another paragraph just so that we can see what happens like between the paragraphs if there's something in our styles that specifies that. And maybe I'll make this the width of a column just to make me happy. Okay, I'm going to drag it out so that it's positioned on the left here so that I can kind of see what I'm doing once I've got these paragraph styles opened. And you can notice by default, you've got this basic paragraph, which means there's no style applied to it. So what I'm going to do is select the text box that we just created with the text inside of it, and I'm going to hit New, which is this little plus sign, and it gives me paragraph style 1. I'm going to double click that, and then I can actually specify some of the options. First thing I'm going to do is change the style name to body, and that's because this is going to be our body text. Anytime I'm starting to design a hierarchy, I typically work from the middle out, which means I'll start with kind of the default text that's going to be most common in the book or the document, which would kind of, in this case, be the body text, and then go upwards and downwards from there to kind of fill out the rest of that hierarchy. You could start at the bottom, you could start at the top, you could start wherever you feel like, is the best place to start. There's really no right or wrong answer. I typically start from the middle and work out. And the other thing I'll say too is that it's not very common, when you're designing something to just like sit here and just generate all the paragraph styles at once. Typically, that's going to be a much more organic process. You might start with 1 or 2, and then as the document gets a little bit longer, you have a few pages, some content to play with. Then you realize you need some more, so you start to generate them, and you might find later that you want to delete something and replace it with something else, or kind of refine down once you've gotten closer to finished. So it's not really typical that you would just have this kind of all figured out the way that we have it figured out, but just for the sake of brevity and for this demo, obviously I've got all the information specified. So actually, if I go to the demo files here, I will open the type hierarchy and just preview it so that we can see what this is supposed to look like. And this is where we're starting. We're kind of starting in the middle here with our body text. So I need to change this to the industry typeface, which I've already got installed. I want it to be book, which gets selected by default. That's just kind of a standard reading weight. And I want to decrease the size to 10 because anything that's 12 point kind of looks just big on page. So anytime you have a printed document, 12 is just kind of, it just looks kind of giant and childish on page when it's printed out. 10 is a much nicer number. So industry, book, 10. The only other thing I'm going to do is change this leading. Leading is the space between each line. So if I change this to something really big, you can see we get really giant gaps between each line of text. I'm going to specify by auto, it's going to give us 120% of the size of the typeface. So 120% of 10 is 12, which is just a little bit tight. So I'm going to use 135%. So I'm going to change this to 13.5, and that just gives us a little bit more breathing room here. Just makes it not quite as dense. And the only other edit to this first paragraph style would be, we want a space after. So I'm just going to use the arrow and increment just 1. I get a 1/16 of an inch. And then you can see anywhere that we have a period and then a line break, which I didn't realize there was actually 2 paragraphs going on in each one of these. But yeah, we've got 4 paragraphs. It gives us a little bit of a break, right? So it's typical that you would use some type of indication between paragraphs to distinguish them. You might indent that text to the left. Like for example, we could say first line indent, 1/4 of an inch, and that would be one way to indicate a new paragraph. I like to just create a space between them. So I'm going to hit OK, and that's our first paragraph style made. And then I'm just going to go back here and delete the line break so that we don't have so much to look at. Okay, so that's our first paragraph style made. And an important thing to know is that when you're making your next paragraph styles, or anytime you're making new ones, if you have something selected, right? Like right now I've got this text box selected. It's highlighting the body paragraph style because that's what's applied to this paragraph. If I make a new one, it's going to base it off the old one, or the one that I have currently selected. So I'll hit new and I'll double click, and you'll see that this based on is set to body, which is that paragraph style that I already had highlighted. If I undo before I made that, and now I click away, and so now nothing is selected, and so basic paragraph is set, and then I click new, it's going to be just like the first one, right? When we've created that initial paragraph style, it's not going to be based on anything. So in this case, I actually want it to be based on something because, we've got, if I go back to our hierarchy here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 paragraph styles total. I don't want to have to set every single one of these to the industry typeface, for example. That's the typeface we're going to use across this entire document. So I don't want to have to specify that every single time. So in this case, as I start to build out this hierarchy, I want to make sure that my body paragraph style is selected so that when I generate the next one, I don't have to enter all of this basic information. It's just already pulling it from that previous style. So the next paragraph style we'll make is the opening body paragraph. So I'm going to call this body and then in parentheses opening. And that's just going to distinguish the first paragraph in a story from the subsequent paragraphs. So what I'll do is go down here to, let's see, drop caps and nested styles. Nested style meaning like a style kind of within a style. And I want a line style because what I'd like to do, if we go back to our reference here, is make this first line bold just to kind of give us a nice visual indication that this is the start of a story. And so what we want is a style that applies to an entire line of text. And So what I'm going to do is click New Line Style. And it's going to say, it's going to give me this drop-down list here, which isn't giving me much options, and I'll explain why in a minute. But we're going to apply this style for one line, and I could make this for 2 lines or 3 lines or however long I wanted it to last. We just want it to be that first line. The reason it's not giving me any options here is because I haven't made any character styles yet. If you all remember from class, the difference between a character style and a paragraph style is that a character style is applied at the individual character level, right? So it could be one single letter within a sentence or within a paragraph that has another style applied to it, whereas a paragraph style works at the entire paragraph level, right? So in order to make this nested line style, we need to create a new character style. So I will just click that. It's giving us a nice little option to kind of skip having to exit and then go do that separately. It's going to let us just do it within this existing menu. And it looks a lot like the paragraph style menu. It's just got less options, right? Because it's much less complicated. We're not talking about things that have to do with paragraphs, right? We're just talking about things that have to do with characters, right? So there's going to be less that we can play with. And what I'm going to do is just call this character style, I think I could just make sure I'm doing it right, bold, right? We just want a bold first line of text. So I'm going to say based on none because it's not based on anything, and I'm just going to call it bold. I think it's always helpful to just call character styles kind of what they are. And all I'm going to do is change the font style to bold. I'm not even going to specify the typeface under font family because it's just more flexible this way. Basically, any typeface I could have selected is probably going to have a bold weight. So I'm just keeping it sort of open-ended and universal by just saying change the style of the font to bold rather than specifying the family and then the style. And that's all I'm going to do is just hit OK. So I've created a very simple character style that's just going to allow me to make a certain, whatever I apply it to, bold. And that's the only difference between this opening paragraph and the other paragraph. So I will hit OK. And then I will double click to get in here, and I will actually select that paragraph style. And for some reason it didn't keep our, oh, there it goes. I don't know what was going on there, but why is it not? Huh. Interesting. We've got some type of glitch here that prevents us from, like when we edit it, it's got the correct style name, but when we exit out, it goes back to paragraph style 1. So I'm going to very quickly close InDesign, open it again, open our document, and yes, hopefully that resolves itself. Okay, cool. So that's the only difference, right? I've applied this paragraph style to the first paragraph. If I applied it to the second one, we'd get that same effect where the first line is bold. But again, we only really want that applied to our first paragraph. So I'm just going to change that back to body. Okay, now there's one other thing that I want to mention because I think it's interesting. And it's a little bit more advanced. But basically, if I open this paragraph style that we just created, we can see that it's based on that body text. And then we have an option for next style. And this means that when I'm actually creating, typing in my document, when I hit enter to create a new paragraph, by default, it's just going to continue that paragraph style that we're already using, right? So by default, if I get out of here and I just hit enter and start typing a new paragraph, it's going to have that same style applied to it, right? But that's not really what I want, because when I'm typing out, the story, I only want this opening paragraph to have that style applied to it. And you can actually tell InDesign for a particular style that when you do want to go on to another paragraph, to choose a different style to continue with. So what I'm going to do is double click in here, and we're going to say we also want the next style to be just the normal body text, right? So I'm going to select that, hit enter. And now you'll see that when I'm at the end of this paragraph and I want to hit enter and start typing a new paragraph, it's automatically jumped to that normal body text. So I didn't have to continue typing and then apply this body. It just does it automatically for me. So just kind of a handy, sort of nifty little feature there. Cool. Okay, so I will delete this. We've got these two paragraph styles the way that we like them. And now we need to create the rest. This is going to be a little bit redundant, so if you feel confident that you can just kind of, like get these things all made, just referencing this document, which I'll also include, feel free to skip the rest of this video. But I'm just going to, for the sake of covering everything, I'm just going to walk through all of it. Okay, we're going to continue to work upwards, which means the next thing we need is this abstract paragraph style. So it's going to be based on body, except it's going to be book italic, right? So we've got these slanted letters and size 24 point, so much bigger than our normal body text. So I'm going to start there. We will select body because we want it to be based on that body paragraph style. You'll notice that almost all of these are based on body, and that's because if I wanted to change the typeface, I could just change the typeface in this one paragraph style, and it would automatically filter down to all those other kind of nested styles. Okay, so I'm going to click New, double click, change this to Abstract, kind of a little blurb about the project we're working on based on body, which is what we want. We want to change this to Book Italic, and we want the size to be 24 point, and that's all I can remember. So I'm going to go back and reference. The leading is going to be much greater, right? Because if we kept this at 13.5 point, it's just going to be very tight. So we're going to change this to, let's see, what was it? 32.4. And then we also need to change the color to primary. So I'm going to go down here and we're going to apply this primary swatch. I'm going to hit enter and then actually select this. This is what I kind of meant to do so that we can see what we're doing as we're editing things. And then I'm going to go back in here. I think one thing that I forgot was to mention that this needs to be center aligned. I don't think I wrote that in here. And we've also turned hyphenation off. Basically, we don't want the way that this is currently, need to exit. This would kind of currently break characters in, or break sentences in kind of weird spots. And I think for something like the abstract, that's just a little bit distracting. So we can actually specify not to do that, not to hyphenate in a paragraph style. So what we'll do here is go to indents and spacing, change the alignment to center, and then go down to hyphenation and just turn that off. And you can see that now, by default, it's not going to break our lines anywhere. It's just going to break where it can break between words where there's a natural space. So I'll hit enter, and that's our abstract typeface. While we're in this abstract, we might as well designate the sort of the call out words. And this is going to be our bold italic character style. So that's how we're getting this different effect, right? Because by default, if I just change a word in here to bold italic, right, it's going to give me this little plus sign, and it's going to tell me there's something in here that shouldn't be here, right? And that's InDesign trying to help you be able to clear up any inconsistencies. So it'll say option click to clear, and if I hold option and click, it will get rid of that automatically for me. And I talked about this in class, but you could also have this setting toggled, and that's going to basically highlight anything that doesn't belong. So right now it's reading this as something that should not be formatted the way that it is. And it's highlighting that error even if I don't have that text box selected. So if I select it and I do the option click, it's just going to clear that and go back the way that it was. So if I want to design in a way to create a character style, right, within a paragraph, I would just need to create one. So I could select this word, and instead of paragraph styles, go down to character styles. I've already got my bold character style, but I'm going to make a new one, and we're going to call it bold italic. And just like the last one we made, I'm only going to change the style. I'm just going to change it to bold italic, and that way it's just going to apply that style to whatever typeface we have selected and hit OK. And now you can see if I click away that we've got that effect, right? We've got this word called out in a darker slanted type, but it's not reading it as an error, right? So if I go back to my paragraph styles menu, I've no longer got that little plus sign and an option to clear any overrides, right? Because I've actually designed that in. And again, the nice thing about doing that is that I've got some leverage over it. Like we talked about this in class, but if I wanted to all of a sudden say, actually, I'd like this to be, black as well, right? I could change the character style, and then anywhere that it's applied, just like other things like swatches, it's going to automatically filter down that change. Okay, so we've got those 2 character styles made. We've got 3 paragraph styles. So on to the next one. The next one would be descriptor. So this one is sort of a little mini heading that gives different information about a project. So that's going to be based on body. So I will have body selected, create a new paragraph style, double click to edit. I'm already blanking on what it's called, descriptor. Let's see, and what is different? So it's going to be bold. So instead of book, we will have, again, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to clear the character styles that are applied to it, just so that as we play around with these things, we can actually see what we're doing. So again, it's based on body, so right now it looks like body. Okay, so basic character formats. We're working on this guy. Okay, so it wants to be bold. The size is the same. The tracking is 150. The tracking is the space between the horizontal space between characters. So if I change this to 150, now all of a sudden that whole thing gets stretched out. And we also want the color to be primary. So we'll go down here to character color, and we'll use our primary swatch to make it orange. We'll go back to basic and look at what else is different. The case is set to small caps, so that's kind of how we get this all caps effect, but a little bit smaller. So we will change the case from normal to small. And you can see what that does is that actually it still gives you kind of that lowercase letter height, but it changed the letter form to all caps. So it kind of gives you capitals, but at a lowercase size. That's what small caps are. And let's see, what else do we need to do? Space before 1/8 of an inch, space after 0. Okay, so indents and spacing, space before 1/8 of an inch, space after 0. And that's it. That's the descriptor paragraph style. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my body, and we'll work on the next one, which would be subtitle. So this one is medium italic, size 32 point. Title, medium italic, 32 point. The leading is going to go back to auto. Right now, again, since the leading was set for the body text, it's really, really tight. So if we change this to auto, it'll be more typical. Or I'm sorry, this is subtitle, not title. Let's see, letting auto color primary align right. So we want the indents and spacing to align to the right side instead of the left, and then we want the color to be our primary color swatch, and that is subtitle. So we've got that one created. Next one would be title. So this is going to be body, based on body, black, size 48 point. So we want to make sure that body is selected. New paragraph style so that it's based on body. This is going to be title. The weight is black, which is close to the heaviest weight. And then I believe the size was 48 points, so very large. Dun, dun, dun. The leading goes back to auto, which is again is that space between the characters so that we don't have that jumbled mess of text. The color is primary. Wait, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. The color is not primary. The only thing that's changed is that we need to align right and change the case to all caps so that we get nice capital letters. And I believe that's it. So black, 48 point, auto leading, align right, all caps. We've done all that. So we will hit OK. And then I'll select body again to reset. let's see, what else do we need to make? Up here is the table of contents, which isn't actually shown in this little diagram, but the table of contents is going to be a specific paragraph style that allows us to specify our table of contents. I might make that later at the end when we talk about table of contents. So maybe right now we'll skip that one and go up to section number. The section number is going to be based on body, but thin 32 point. So new section number, industry, thin, 32 point, nice and large. This is the one we're working on. Letting auto. And then the last thing we need to do is change the figure style to tabular old style and align to the center. So the first thing we'll do is align to center because that's very simple. Alignment center. And then the next change I'll make, I will actually type in some numbers here so that we can see what we're doing. Because this is a little bit more of a, I don't know, I guess kind of advanced typographic thing. So we'll enter that section number, paragraph style. And we will go down here to open type features. And basically, by default, you kind of get the normal character that was designed by whoever designed the typeface. Old style basically they just might look a little bit different. So in this case, if we use tabular old style, we get this little foot on the one, which is just a nicer, if you're going to use it as sort of a large graphic element, you're having the sort of the standard little skinny one there, which looks good in a block of text because it's got, it doesn't have this big space around it, looks fine. But if we use the old style, we get a little bit more space there. So I believe that's all we're doing is changing that so that we get this little foot on the one and we get a little bit more space between the characters. And that's it. Although I don't believe that we changed the color. Okay, so we've got all of those paragraph styles made. Now we need to work down. We kind of worked our way all the way up, and maybe I'll quickly just rearrange this so that it kind of follows our hierarchy. Drag all these things into their correct location so that it looks in our dialog box kind of the way that we wanted it to look in our actual order. So we'll start again with body and then work downward. So next we need to make our caption paragraph style. So that's going to also be based on body. So I will select our box here, apply that body style, and then click new. Change this to caption, basic character formats. And then we need to change the weight to medium and the size to 8. So we're going to make this a little bit heavier, but also a little bit smaller. And I think anytime you start to make text small, something like 7 or 8 point, just kind of the normal book weight or regular weight starts to get a little bit thin. So kind of beefing up that stroke weight a little bit is going to help with legibility. Let's see here. The leading is also going to have to change, right? Because the text got a lot smaller, so keeping the line spacing that large is going to look a little awkward. So we're going to change that to 10.8, which kind of brings it back to a more proportional leading. We want to change the color to primary and the right indent to 1 inch. So we will change the color to primary, and then under indents and spacing, again, we will create a right indent of 1 inch. And this isn't something that you would always have to specify in your paragraph styles, but I wanted to include it to show you that it is possible, right? So the reason for this is that, our captions are going to be smaller blocks of text. And so do we really want them to take up the entire column width and be, let's say we just had a sentence that we wanted to use as a caption. it might look a little bit awkward to kind of be strung out into just one single line. It might not necessarily read like a caption. So what we're going to do is help ourselves out, kind of cheat a little bit by saying we want to create a right indent, which is just basically taking the right edge of this text box and bumping this text back from that edge by 1 inch. And what that means is that, we can just make all of these text boxes the size of a column, but naturally kind of get that inset spacing without having to go format it separately. So again, just because I want to be able to just use this column width as kind of a standard increment of sizing, and I don't want to just make arbitrary decisions about how these captions kind of get squished so that they appear more like a body of text or a block of text rather than just a single line. I'm going to incorporate that into my paragraph style itself. So the last thing we need to do is create our pagination, which is our page numbers. Those are also going to be based on body. So I'm going to select body, create a new paragraph style. We're going to call it pagination. And then we want to change the size to 7 point and the leading to auto. So we're going to keep that book weight 7 point, auto leading. We're getting really small here, but these are just little details, right? Kind of letting people know what page they're on. So it shouldn't be too large, shouldn't be too prominent, should kind of blend into the background texture of the document. Let's see, the tracking is going to be 150, so we're kind of borrowing that from our descriptor style, kind of pulling things out a little bit. And let's see, so 7 point, auto tracking, 150, tabular old style. So we're going to borrow that same technique that we used for our section numbers to get our little foot on the ones. So we're going to go down here to open type, change the figure style to tabular old style. Then we're going to align also to right and change the case to all caps. So indents and spacing, align right, basic character formats, all caps. And that's our pagination style. We'll hit OK to select that. And again, I'll just drag this into the proper level of the hierarchy. And that's a pretty good start we've made in terms of defining the typographic hierarchy of this document. The last thing that we would need to do is create our sort of inverted or lighter variants of these styles for any type of dark content, right? Where we've got a dark background, that's what this is illustrating. We would kind of want to invert some of this text to be white so that it is more legible. And we will also save this last character style for later when we build out our table of contents. So the last thing we need to do is define these two character styles, or sorry, to create these two inverted caption and pagination paragraph styles. And so what we'll do, just to keep things a little bit more organized, is I will create a folder, right? And I'll say style group 1, we'll just call this regular, right? These are going to be sort of all of our regular paragraph styles. I'm just going to select everything that we've made, and I'm going to drag it into this regular folder. And then I'm going to create another folder, and we're going to call this invert. And what I'm going to do is basically just copy some of these styles, and I'm going to drag them into this invert folder, just to keep things a little bit more separate, so that we don't have to get this list super long. We can kind of keep things more organized. And so what I'll do is I'll select we want the caption and pagination. I'm also just going to go ahead and select body and body opening. Since those are black text, I'm just going to create inverted versions of all of those different styles. And so I'm going to duplicate them, and that automatically gives us all these copies. So I'm just going to drag or select all the different copies that we just made. Move them into this inverted folder. That way we can just keep them separate. And then I'm just going to rename each of them and get rid of that copy text. So they're just named the exact same thing as the standard style, but keeping them in a separate folder allows me just to kind of logically keep these things separate. And so then what I'll do is, let's just apply one of these styles. All I'm going to do is double click to open that style. I want it to be based on the original, sort of the non-inverted version. So I'm just going to make sure that based on is not selected or not set to body, but based on the style we duplicated it from. And then all I'm going to do is go down to character color, and instead of black, I'm going to change it to paper. So it's going to be white, and hit OK. And I'm just going to do that for all of these different styles. So we're going to make sure it's based on the original body, except for the character color. Same thing with our caption. It should be based on the original caption, but the character color should be set to white. Same thing for pagination. It should be based on the original pagination and with a white color. And the reason for working in this way, again, is just because let's say that I wanted to change something about this body text. I don't want to have to then also go change sort of the inverted variant of that body text, right? But if this body is based on the original body and I make a change to the original body, then it's going to naturally filter down and update those things automatically, which we could demonstrate, right? So if I create a black area and I drag out our some body text here, and then I pull this, or I copy and duplicate this over and select the original body, right? So now you can see our two different variants, right? We've got our normal body for, white backgrounds or light colored backgrounds. We've got our inverted body for dark colored backgrounds. Let's say that I want to select this original paragraph style, this original body text, and we want to change it to, we just want to make it a little bigger. We decided it's a little too small. If I change that up to 12 point, you can see that both of these are updating automatically. And that's because we have intentionally based the inverted body on the original body so that we don't have to update each of those separately. They just update together automatically. So I'll hit exit to cancel. And this is basically our typographic hierarchy. Again, there's a couple things here that we didn't format yet. This table of contents, paragraph and character styles. But everything else we've produced here. There might be a couple little errors or mistakes. We already found one in that abstract that wasn't centered. So we might find more as we go to start laying out this document. But that is where we will conclude this video. And we've got all of our styles set up there.